In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. As the world erupted in celebration, a KGB agent in Dresden felt a chill crawl down his spine. His mission had failed, and his country was vanishing from the map. Once an elite intelligence officer, he was left with almost nothing, just a broken washing machine. He even began scanning newspaper ads for taxi driver jobs. Who could have imagined that this man standing in the cold, wondering how to survive, would, in less than a decade, take control of the Kremlin's nuclear briefcase? And for the next quarter century, become one of the West's most enduring nightmares. His name is Vladimir Putin. Act 1. Putin's political instincts weren't shaped at Harvard or Oxford, but in the foul, dim stairwells of Leningrad. The rule there was simple. If a fight is inevitable, you strike first. He became obsessed with judo not merely as a sport, but as a governing philosophy. Observe your opponent, turn their strength against them, and strike the instant they lose balance. When he joined the KGB, that street-honed instinct evolved into something almost surgical. He learned to watch the world from the shadows, not from the spotlight. Putin's intelligence career ended in 1989 as the 100-mile Berlin Wall crumbled overnight amid the great upheaval in Eastern Europe as Germany reunified. Putin retreated with the KGB back to Leningrad. At the time, the Soviet Union was gripped by political chaos and economic collapse. The world was in turmoil, and like many returning KGB agents facing unemployment, Putin was no exception. To make a living, the 38-year-old seriously considered driving a taxi just to get by. Fortunately, the KGB later secured him a position as an international affairs assistant to the rector of Leningrad State University. Though it was a low-paying job, it was a stable position within the system, so Putin accepted it. It was there at Leningrad State University that he met his mentor, Anatoly Sobchak. In the early 90s, as democratic fervor swept the USSR, Sobchak seized the opportunity to enter politics. He had already become the chairman of the Leningrad City Council. With years of hard-earned KGB experience, rich political insight, and being his former student, Putin was someone he could trust. The two hit it off perfectly. Putin became Sobchak's international advisor, formally entering politics and making the ultimate pivot in his life. Act 2. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. For most officials, it was a moment to flee, but for Putin, it was the first great gamble of his life. On the 12th of June 1991, Boris Yeltsin was elected as Russia's first president. Later, during the famous August coup that forced Gorbachev's resignation, Sobchak stood firmly as one of Yeltsin's supporters. When the hardline KGB prepared to arrest him, Putin personally led a team to extract Sobchak and ensure his safety before the secret police could strike. Putin's loyalty to Sobchak paid off quickly. He rose rapidly, becoming the first deputy mayor of St. Petersburg by 1994. Sobchak was an academic-type official. Though involved in politics, he had little interest in tedious administrative affairs, preferring international travel and inspections. He trusted Putin implicitly, often signing numerous blank official documents before traveling and leaving all concrete affairs in Putin's hands. Putin became the city's de facto power broker, known in both elite and underworld circles as the Grey Cardinal of St. Petersburg. Yet he never overstepped, always asking for Sobchak's instructions before handling anything. It was, in essence, a calculated game. He traded absolute loyalty for a ticket into the inner circle of power. He sought control rather than titles or fame. He controlled the flow of every cent in the city, yet never stole the spotlight in public. This image, highly reliable yet seemingly non-threatening, carried through the cold Siberian winds to the ears of an aging leader unraveling under corruption and alcohol. Boris Yeltsin. Act 3. By 1999, Yeltsin desperately needed a bodyguard, someone who could guard his family's secrets and handle the dirtiest work in a messy situation. Putin stepped forward and in just 1 year, made a staggering leap from intelligence chief to president. As Yeltsin handed over power, he urged, "Take care, of Russia. But Putin's version of care carried the scent of blood. In March 2000, Putin won the election and officially became the president of Russia. Upon taking office, he faced two historical legacies: the issue of Chechen independence and oligarchic interference in politics. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Chechnya had waged a frenzied campaign of terrorist attacks for independence, leaving the Russian people living in constant fear. For a full decade, the Yeltsin government was indecisive and helpless regarding Chechnya. However, Putin decided to deal with the Chechen problem with an iron fist. Facing Chechen provocations, he abandoned all diplomatic niceties and delivered the ruthless line that shocked the world: "To forgive terrorists is God's job. My job is to send them to meet him." In that moment, the humiliated Russian public went wild. They no longer wanted a drunken politician, they wanted a strong man. Under Putin's tough stance, the Russian army swept through unstoppably, eventually forcing Chechnya to abandon independence, and the domestic situation in Russia finally stabilized. Act 4. After pacifying external threats, he turned around and looked at those oligarchs who believed themselves more powerful than the Kremlin. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, a small group of people aggressively bought up state assets at low prices, amassing colossal personal wealth. Gradually, the 7 oligarchs came to control every aspect of Russia, occupying the vast majority of social resources, while the wealth gap widened and the people lived in extreme misery. Putin offered an ultimatum they couldn't refuse: "Take your money and stay out of my politics. Otherwise, I will take everything from you, including your lives." The once untouchable financial tycoons either faded away in Siberian prison cells or died under mysterious circumstances on the streets of London. Putin didn't just reclaim the wealth, he redefined who truly owned the state. Act 5. In 2008, limited by the Constitution, Putin stepped behind the scenes to serve as prime minister, elevating his old partner Medvedev to the top. But people quickly discovered, wherever Putin was, the center of power followed. Faced with indecisiveness when war broke out, and holding unrealistic illusions about the Western order, Medvedev's performance deeply disappointed Russia's military and political elites. Putin had to save the day once again, reclaiming the presidential throne. Since then, he annexed Crimea, intervened in Syria, and in 2022, launched the largest ground war in Europe since World War II. This was his final showdown with the Western order, and all the chips he gambled for his historical legacy. Today, Putin is 73 years old. It remains to be seen if, by 2036, at the age of 84, he will still be able to govern Russia with his consistent iron-fisted style. However, every strongman story carries a hidden cost. Putin has built himself into the sole load-bearing wall of this edifice. Most Russians believe that as long as he is there, stability remains. But this also brings about a terrifying question. If one man represents an entire nation, will the country collapse along with him when his time finally runs out? If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. This is Opaque, and we'll see you in the next one.